I would love to welcome Eileen again. We wish it were in person, but we are doing the best we can with what we have. And so I'm going to share Eileen's slides and just let her get going with us this morning.
Great. Thank you all for the introductions. It really does help. And I think it's a great way to recognize the system that's involved with this work and the partnerships that we're leaning into as we look at bridges toward partnerships, which will be part of the conference next month, actually. So it really does help a lot. Thank you from all the way from early childhood to foundations. I'm so excited to have met and seen some of you again today. So we are talking about partnerships, and last year, what we talked about, just as a quick review on the next slide, it'll show you, just for those of you who were there, it's a great reminder. And for those of you who weren't there, it's just kind of a way to ground ourselves in how we're going to move forward in the next hour together. And then as we prepare for next month's conference. So last year, we just really dug in a little bit about the parent journey. I am a parent of a now 33-year-old who still requires 24/7 care. And my work as a parent has always been to connect with other parents and the systems that we navigate within, and to just try to make the system a better place and to activate the leadership qualities that reside in all of us as parents and as systems leaders. We come together through that core desire to have better outcomes for kids and families. I talked a little bit about innovation and shared a story of the Bus Buddy program that I created in my own local school district. Again, recognizing how important the system of education is in the betterment of our health outcomes for kids. The Bus Buddy program was an integrated way to allow my daughter to ride the regular school bus instead of the special education bus, whereby she continued, if she would have stayed in the special education bus, she would have continued a life of isolation, which is not what's helpful. We talked a little bit about the diversity of language and the importance and the power of communication. And we talked about, I gave an example of just how one word could change the way that we interacted with each other. I shared a story of going through the McDonald's drive-through. And for those of you who are there, you'll remember that. But just the message again is just to be mindful of the diversity of our language and the diversity of our literacy and our dialect and just the way that we interact with each other. And then we talked a lot about just the reminder that families are a horizontal thread across all these vertical systems: education, healthcare, Parks and Rec, early childhood. Department of Transportation actually plays a big role in the way that we connect with each other, and to be mindful of the power that we have as families to impact those systems. We really dug in around the progression of family leadership, and we're going to cover a little bit of that today so that we embed that shared language of inner ring, community ring, and outer ring family, and that evolved system that kind of works through families to help them work in a way that is comfortable for them at the level of influence that they want to be. And then from the systems perspective, really looking at what are the readiness factors for those of you who are here who have influence, authority, and responsibility, whether it's Title V or the LEND program or the university. Like, what can we do as partners to sustain a culture of family engagement and family leadership? And then I shared with you at the end the power of resilience and my daughter's song that she wrote as a person who remains nonverbal but found a way to break through communication, and the message of her song. So that's kind of in summary what we covered last year, and I think it's really helpful that we kind of step back into that and try to remember, for those of you who were there, what was that feeling that you had? So on the next screen, we're going to ask you to use your annotation function on the Zoom. You can access that by going to your view options up at the top and pull down on the drop menu the annotation option. And then we'll ask you to choose the text option, and you can write whatever you want to write. And what I'd like you to write is just a phrase or a feeling that you have about whether when you attended last year, what did you come away with? I think it was, for you guys are talking about, you remembered the message from last year. Or for those of you who were not able to attend, but you heard the summary now, what are some of the phrases and words that come out for you now? We'll take a few minutes for you all to express. Thank you for engaging in this way.
Heather, you might tell them how to do it in case they don't know.
Yeah, Eileen just told everyone if you click on your view options and then you should see an annotate button and you should be able to start typing using your text. Yeah.
Can I add one more
Of course.
part of the direction to that?
Sure.
We click on Eileen's view options, not our own at the bottom left.
Thank you, Jerry, for that.
I had to figure it out.
That's okay. Thank you for that. Just another example of partnership, right?
That's right. Yeah, great point, Rihanna. If you can't access the annotation, just put it in the chat. And if anybody wants to unmute and just talk for a minute, that's the point of this as well, is we're talking about engagement today. So if anyone wants to just share, feel free. I love that. Small actions have big outcomes. That's great.
Okay, we got to go, Melinda. Tell them. I think Tara and I took away from that from last year is every behavior is a form of communication.
Ah, excellent. Thank you. And Jerry shared in the chat that each and every one of us here today, including family members, are all community anchors. I love that.
If you're having difficulty, be sure and click on text, not on draw. That was an error I made to begin with.
Unless you're a great artist and you can illustrate it that way, which I am not.
That's like playing Pictionary online here. You don't want to have me as your Pictionary partner. I cannot draw for anything. Great. I think what we're seeing here is, I love the comment about a sense of belonging. We talked about that, just that we're all, this is, a movement is not dependent on one person. A movement is a collection of people with often, somebody in the front who has the microphone at the time, but all of us have a role in making systems more friendly and more person-centered and more quality driven on behalf of kids and youth of all kinds. And we tend to talk about kids with special healthcare needs, but we know that definition is so broad. And so it's really all kids and families. Appreciate the comment, Michelle, around not boxing ourselves into a particular thought process. Thank you. Look at all the stars and all of that. That's lovely. Thank you. Yes, and thank you. I do have the invitation to attend the Department of Mental Health and Substance, am I saying that right? Substance Abuse Department, and the annual conference coming up in April. So I will be presenting there and I'm really excited about that. So thank you so much for that invitation. Thank you, Hannah, for your comment around engaging others in a more meaningful way, in a better way. Thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for participating in this way. And through the next hour, anytime you want to add a comment, put it in the chat, raise your hand, get yourself off mute, where we really want to exchange with one another our wisdom and our passion. So feel free. Again, this is not a one-way conversation today. This is about engaging with each other and building our bridges of partnership. So as we go to the next slide, I want to just comment again that we mentioned this last year, that Oklahoma is full of family leaders who are ready to be activated and ready to just share their wisdom. That's kind of cool, actually, how that overlaid on that. That's really cool. And that families do have valuable information to share. And so our conversation, this exchange today, is to continue to ask, how are we harvesting the human capital in the state of Oklahoma? From all the various regions that you mentioned in your introductions, from Southwest to Northeast to all of the areas of Oklahoma, there are families tucked away, ready to be engaged if they have the right tools and if they have a sense of belonging, that their voice matters and that what they have to say and how they say it matters in a way that makes the system a better place. And so again, that's part of what we're talking about in this conversation today, is that how can we harvest all of the human capital in the state of Oklahoma? And what we also know is that sometimes there are long-standing myths, and we have to do myth busting to kind of get behind that and say, well, what is standing in the way? And oftentimes, as you'll see on this slide, is that families, and some of this is a review for some of you, is that on the left side of this table, this is some of the talk that families have, is that, well, my experience doesn't matter, or that this talk about quality improvement is too ambiguous and it's too much of my time and I don't understand it, or that I just don't have time to be involved. Or sometimes we've said that, you know, I've offered feedback in the past and no one listened, so I'm kind of tired and I don't want to keep trying. And then also the other piece that I think is really helpful is on the second one there, is that sometimes it feels like the system blames families for the outcome of my kiddo. So I don't even know if I'm welcome there. I don't know if I feel safe, if there is this sense of my voice matters at this table in terms of quality improvement. But on the right side, if we talk about innovation and how we can shift our thinking, is as family leaders, we have to be reminded that actually all of my experience matters. And I could be a valuable member of a teaching culture in all the systems that we've identified already today. And that actually I, as a family leader, could pause long enough and I can figure out the culture of those systems. For example, in education, when it comes to IEPs and 504s, that's a federal mandate. And so oftentimes the culture in education is there's a sense of we have to do this, but I'm not sure how, or it's unfunded. That's kind of the culture of education in a way that's kind of subtle. Sometimes the culture of child welfare, or sometimes families feel like anytime there's a social worker, then that's somebody that's going to be punitive, when really people that get involved in the Department of Human Services care deeply about children. And we have to figure out a way to communicate that with one another. As parent leaders, we can sign confidentiality statements. We can learn other terms like quality improvement, continuous quality improvement, which is CQI, or the Plan, Do, Study, Act, which is another cycle of continuous quality improvement. We can learn those things. And it may be unfamiliar at first, but we can come around. And then the final one I want to say too, for those of us who feel like, and for those of you who have said, yeah, but I've offered feedback in the past, but it doesn't go anywhere. We really have to take a step back and say, well, what can I do differently? Is it the words I'm using? Going back to diverse communication. Is it how I'm saying it? Is it when I'm saying it? Is it a platform I'm using that's unfamiliar? And so we all do this work because we care deeply. The communication piece and the how is what the bridge is to understanding each other and to the partnership. So I love the analogy of bridges, so I'm glad that we're talking about that today. On the next slide, I'm going to do a review of the progression of leadership. And again, for those of you who were there last year, this will be a review, but it's always good to remember so that we have shared language. For families to get involved in a leadership role, I believe, first of all, I believe that we are all leaders. It's just a matter of our sphere of influence and the platform that we're given to exercise that leadership. And that some families first start as being leaders of their own family, of their own situation. And that's when you see families who are really just dedicated to the best parenting and understanding the diagnosis of their kiddo. And they really are leading on behalf of their own family. And that's a good thing. We want engaged and involved parenting skills. That's an excellent way to start. And it's an excellent way to make Oklahoma a better place when we have dedicated parents, regardless of the dynamics and the form of the family. It's the function of the family of excellence that matters. And then some families, you'll see with the arrow, they move into wanting to be leaders in their community. And that's when you'll see families who, as represented by our person here today with autism, for example, where some families just really say, wow, I want to connect with more families who have kiddos with autism, and I want to be that bridge to bring resources and support to them. And they take what they've learned from their own family situation, and then they move it into the community. And then finally, we have families who really want to lead on behalf of others. And that's that outer ring of leadership where they get involved maybe in policy discussions, or families will lead on an advisory. And they're really digging in on strategic planning. They'll work with Title V on the block grant, and they'll be a block grant reviewer. And so we have families that move from the inner ring to the community ring and to the outer ring. And sometimes that's fluid. And sometimes families will stay on the inner ring. And that's a great thing. But what I want you to see here is we have decision makers who are asking for families to be involved in some of those strategic conversations. And they're often they're asking for a family on the outer ring, someone who understands strategic planning and block grants and all of those kind of bigger systems pieces that involve funding and policy. But what has happened is that because we have done over time in our country, as well as in our state, is that we send an inner ring family to an outer ring invitation, and it doesn't work. We send an inner ring family to an outer ring invitation, and it's disastrous because the family just really wanted to learn more about their kiddo. They were not prepared. And so what happens is those, the outer ring entity who asked for a family will say, well, see, we invited a family leader, but all he or she did was talk about their kiddo. All they did was talk about how they couldn't get access to the clinic, or they couldn't get into a particular program. And we really wanted them to move to strategy, and they couldn't do it. So we're not asking families anymore because they don't get it. And then the family will say, wow, that was not fun. I had no idea what they were talking about. I didn't know the acronyms. I didn't understand what they were talking about. And so I felt like all I could do was share what I did know, which was about my own kiddo, but I knew that I didn't contribute in the way that they needed. So this partnership got a little wacky because we did not prepare. We didn't understand what kind of family engagement we needed when we asked the family to engage as a partner. So that's the kind of shared language I'm hoping you all might find helpful to talk about an inner ring family versus an outer ring family, or an inner ring assignment or an outer ring assignment, and to be mindful of that. So yes, the next slide is to ask ourselves, when we're looking at when you're a systems person and you're asking for a family leader, your role is to really be clear and to define what you want that family leader to do and how you want them to engage with you, because we're all a part of setting the table in a way that is successful. And it's our role as we do this work together is that when we embrace that family's experience, but we braid it into the quality improvement mechanisms, that's when we have success. And so we have to look also, on the next slide, we'll talk about, how we can shift in our mind that we're shifting away from servicing families to partnering with families. Sometimes that's a hard shift. That's a bridge we have to cross together, is that we're going from servicing families, like they're just the consumer of services, to partnering which means that they have a role in making the system better for kids and families. That's the shift. That's the difference. And so then we say, well, geez, how do we find these parents? Where are these families that want to be involved? Where are these families in Oklahoma that are saying, I'm ready to be activated? And so here I just want to show you that from this perspective, believe it or not, you have so many families in Oklahoma that have been identified by Title V and other systems as having kids with special health care needs. We could fill up your beloved stadium 3 or 4 times with these families and their siblings and their parents and their aunties and their grandparents. Families broadly, not talking just about parents. There are siblings who have their own lived experience, who want to be involved. We have grandparents who have said, I have seen this happen at a systems level long enough and I'm ready to get involved. And so just remember that if you need a visual, for those of us who are visuals, look at this football stadium and remember that this is the number of parents and families and kids and grandparents and aunties. I mean, my sister is on the call today. And she has been alongside me for my entire daughter's life. And why is she here today? Because she cares and because she wants to make the system in Oklahoma a better place. So that's just an example of how broad we need to look at the family network that are involved with quality improvement of systems. I'm going to pause for just a moment. I've shared a lot already. Any comments, any thoughts? Anybody want to come off mute and share anything? A reflection, a motivation, an inspiration. Oh, our dog wants to comment. I love that. Michelle, did you come off? Great. Michelle, I'd love to hear from you.
Yeah, I would say just the power of the word partnership and replacing. I'm thinking of how we describe our program to families initially, and replacing the word service with partnership always.
Great, thank you, Michelle. And Michelle Desario, did you have a comment?
Yeah, family does make a difference in our lives, but it's also the individuals that have the self-advocates that have the disability, to hear it from them and for us to learn how to tell others how we feel.
Michelle, I'm so glad you brought that up, and I do owe you an apology for not including. No, it's you bring up such a good point. As a matter of fact, we're going to talk about it in a couple of slides. We're going to talk about the omission sometimes of the self-advocate as part of this. So thank you, and I'm going to hold that in the parking lot because we're going to discuss that. So thank you for holding me accountable. I think it's important, and I just want to pause and just call out the courage that Michelle just illuminated for us, that when we use language whereby people feel unseen or unheard or unrecognized, Michelle, that was so courageous of you to say, hey, don't forget about me, and this is the terminology matters. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And holding me accountable as your presenter today, and to the rest of the people on this call is powerful. Thank you. Anyone else want to comment?
Well, and you said to advocate, you have to learn, a family has to learn how to advocate, for their child, because my son has a 504 and we often have to remind them, remember he has a 504 and he gets extra time, and you just have to, and my son is able where he's trying to learn to advocate for himself, but not all children can advocate for themselves. And so that family support, and then those teachers help, also with that. But that's often for many of our families we work with, it's hard to learn how to do that.
Great point, Angie. And I think that's part of what we were talking about, that progression of leadership. You start with your own kiddo and your own family, and you learn those skills of leadership and self-advocacy and knowing enough about the system to know the questions and to know your rights and know the process. So great point. Thank you, Angie. Anyone else?
No,
Okay.
this is Mark. I think one of the challenges that I see a lot of the times is understanding where and how to partner with families and bring partners' perspectives into the education realm, particularly in my case, nursing. So a lot of my colleagues may not have an understanding of how to approach and how to partner with families. So figuring out some ways, I think, with increasing the likelihood of partnerships is something I'm really interested in.
Great. Thank you, Mark. And you're with the LEND program, right? I mean, that's one.
One of my hats, yes.
Yeah. I was a LEND fellow I think in 2001 or 2002, just life-changing. So yeah, great
Well,
program there.
I took it in 97, 98, and my life was changed from that experience. And everything I do directly relates back to Jan Moss, who was our parent
Oh yeah.
at the time. And so she
Yeah.
influenced everything that I do.
Yeah, she's quite the influencer. Her energy is unbelievable. It's awesome. Thank you. So I think we talk about then, how do we prepare ourselves? What is the readiness that we need to do? And part of this is what is just exploring our past history, both again as a family leader, self-advocate, as well as being someone in a position of authority or decision making at a system. Is we just need to say what have we done in the past? What went well? What didn't go well? Take a strength-based approach. When it went well, how do we take that to scale? How do we look? Who was there at the time that was a block, or who was there at the time who was our champion? And let's build on that. So explore your past history. Look at the culture of your agency. Look at the culture. Are you inviting? Are you welcoming? Again, I'll go back to, I've worked across so many systems, and I've learned to understand the different cultures of different agencies and organizations. I remember when I first started working in Title V, and we had all of our work was in the prevention services division. And I was like, oh man, as a parent of a kiddo who needs a lot of care, I feel like there's a message there that we should have prevented her. We should have prevented the difference that she brings to the world. And that made me feel sad. Like, I embrace all of what my daughter brings to the table. It's different than my other typically developing kids. She's 2 of 4. And so I had to have those conversations and say, can we use different words when we talk about preventing disabilities? That's so offensive to those of us who have done this work to really promote a sense of diversity, equity, and inclusion of all people. And so that's just, again, another example. We see that sometimes in child welfare, where the culture of the organization for years has been that there's a little bit of a disconnect, because oftentimes families feel a sense of blame for the way that their kiddo has been behaving or something. And so sometimes families have to break through that culture to say, yeah, but some of this is really worth our partnership, and we need to work on that. So really identifying the culture and asking people, how do you see us as an agency, is really important. And as an agency, are you ready to hear that? Are you ready to hear that full transparency? Same for the families. If families can say, hey, what behaviors have you seen in me that have caused you to not want to work with me? Like, oh, well, because you call us at 7 a.m. and we're not ready for that. Oh, okay. Well, if I call you at 10, will that work? So to be fully open and transparent, and to be ready to hear the feedback in a way that's done well. And yes, that goes back to training and lots of emotional intelligence, but we can get there. We can get there. And do we have leadership in all directions? Are you willing to be flexible? And most importantly, I will always say that your budget is your policy statement. And if you say as an agency person that you care deeply about engaging and helping families on their learning path, where does that show up in your budget? Because if it's not there, it's not going to happen. So we really need to look at our budgets as part of our policy statement. And I think that that's super important. So as we look at the next slide, we'll talk about, okay, well, if those are some strategies that will take us to sustainability, all of us, again, back to the partnerships, we have to have this shared vision across agencies. And if part of that, again, is your budget is your policy statement, is there a way? I know oftentimes the system is not able to compensate families directly. That's well known. We all know that you cannot use grant money to directly pay parents. Then go through a nonprofit agency, go through an agency or a group that can offer stipends and honorariums and support for families. Don't let that be the barrier, because you can compensate families for their incredible consultation and their systems knowledge. You just have to get creative about that. And are you articulating and being bold around posting your commitment to family engagement and family leadership development in your value statements? Are there clear outcomes and expectations? All of that should be clear and easy for families and agency partners to find. And I think the most important part is, man, let's celebrate the good stuff that's happening. Share the data, have a cross-agency agreement that you're going to really share some of the impact that has happened. I've worked with North Dakota and the state of Wisconsin for years, and they've done a great job of bringing a coalition together, as have you all in Oklahoma. But specifically, one of the things that those two states worked on is from early childhood with Head Start, all of that. They started tracking the impact that was happening when they brought more families into their policy discussions, when they brought families in at the inner ring, community, and outer ring, and they started sharing. They kind of had like a dashboard. To hate to overuse that term, but that's what a lot of folks are doing now, creating impact dashboards, and it's really powerful. So you can think about that. One of the things that I shared about my daughter last year is that she, at the age of 22, she was finally able to communicate. And one of the sentence by typing on a very basic keyboard, just got like literally typing one. It took about 20 minutes to get one word in her first probably year of learning how to unlock her communication. And one of the first sentences that she typed was, "I want a platform to teach about love." Oh my gosh, who knew? How powerful is that? And that's been, as her mom, that's been kind of my North Star, my guiding light for now, is to say, where are the platforms that I can uncover for her so that she can teach about a sense of belonging and love and acceptance in the world. So I bring this up because I'm curious about you. Like if you were to replace the word love with your passion and the fire that's in your belly, what would you put there? I want a platform to teach about what? Acceptance, inclusion, equity, the power of the Native experience. I don't know. And you don't need to share that now, but I'd be curious if you want to put it in the chat, or if anybody wants to say, or just report back to Heather and Joni and say, what, if you had the platform, what is it that you want to teach about? Because in such a simple way that my daughter, after 22 years of being completely locked up in language, that's what she said she wanted to do, was teach about love. I think it's amazing. Rihanna says she wants to teach about self-advocacy. That's so powerful. And that's when you start saying, okay, as a collective, can we have a shared goal? When we start asking people, if you were the magic wizard of the day and you had a classroom full of people, what would you want to teach them? So that's just something to leave you with, to think through that. So I want to talk about just what Michelle brought up earlier, and that is there is kind of some confusion going on about the term family leader. And confusion's not a bad thing. Sometimes we have to really rumble and wrestle with these terms, because that goes back to the diversity of language and the diversity of communication. So Heather's going to bring up this poll. I want to just ask, and again, thanks Michelle for bringing that up. Is there some confusion or misunderstanding? Maybe confusion's not the right word. Do we need to talk more about the terminology that we use around family leader? So Heather's going to bring up a poll. It's anonymous, but I'm just kind of curious if you guys wouldn't mind checking either yes, no, or not sure when Heather brings that up.
Can you not see it? It should be up.
I don't see it on my screen.
Can anyone else see it?
I see it.
You saw it? Okay.
I see it.
I think co-host Heather can't see it.
I can see it, but it won't check.
It won't let you do anything?
It's just showing the slide, but it's not showing the actual poll.
When I clicked on it, it was just a little dot. Oh, okay.
Oh, there we go.
Here we go. Here we go.
Okay.
Maybe it was delayed in its launching.
Well, yeah, let's leave this up. Let's look at this. I'm hearing this more and more and more as I talk to groups across the country, that we need to pause long enough to talk about these terms that we use. We've used the term family leader because in Title V for a long time, because we recognize the role of the family in patient and family-centered care. It came from some of that. We expanded it from parent leader to family leader. But here's the cool thing, as Michelle brought up, seriously, 40 or 50 years ago, because of our not evolved healthcare systems at that time, young adults with special healthcare needs were not living long into life. And so part of what the data showed us is, because of our successful transition programs and early detection, all the early intervention work that's so represented today, we do have people that are now really ready to be involved in this work, when 30, 40 years ago, when these constructs were put together, there was no space for them at the table. So you can take that down, Heather, if everybody's had a chance to see that over half of us on this call today have said, you know, there's just we need to talk about this more. So I appreciate that. And I'm so glad that we brought it up, because a lot of the people that I've worked with over across the country have said that the term self-advocate, even that isn't strong enough language, and that we need to have even better terminology for that. Like, again, as a consultant, as a systems consultant. So I'm going to take it off of my screen. Heather, can you go to the next slide? There we go. Okay, so when we talk about this terminology, go back to the progression of leadership. Some folks have said, well, it feels to me when you say the terms, if we use the term self-advocate, that's kind of putting them in a box that they're just concerned about inner ring because it says self-advocate. And then we talk about, well, is it family leader, but is it inclusive enough to, again, back to the point of, what about is a self-advocate and a family leader the same thing? I don't have any answers here. I'm just bringing this up so that you all can go into your own communities and your own team and talk through some of this. We also see the term a lot now, a peer navigator. We see that in mental health and substance abuse a lot. But does that relegate a peer navigator to just an inner ring or a community ring role? Does that mean they won't be considered as part of the outer ring and a policy and strategy? I don't know. I'm just throwing some of these things out. We also now see the term a lot, a person with lived experience. I love that, but don't we all have lived experience? We're all living. We all have something we've been through. It's come up a lot in emergency preparedness right now, and saying, well, for people who have, as you guys have so many times, gone through tornadoes, or Patty and I were raised in Houston, we've been through hurricanes, and now because of COVID, we can all say we've all been through a global pandemic and a lockdown. None of us had that experience prior to 2020, at least not people that I have chatted with. So we all now have a sense of lived experience. So when we're asking again for family engagement, for family partnership, lived experience in ... That should be something we should be considering and talking about. And then sometimes we talk about, well, we want to invite a parent. Is there a connotation, or, we want to invite a mom, or we want dads? Are we giving a connotation that they haven't been trained in systems work? Maybe they have, maybe they haven't. So these are, again, some comments and thoughts that I'm hearing across the country and in other dialogue and other classrooms. And so I really encourage you all to talk through this with your agencies and maybe decide that you might use all these terms. And what you're really coming down to is, it's why I have often gone back to the word community engagement, because that's a little broader, that anybody who is from the community of something, or they live in a particular geography where we know that in social determinants of health, seriously, we know the data shows it, by certain zip codes that can project and predict our health trajectory based on public health surveillance and monitoring with water quality, air quality, access to food. There might be food deserts more prevalent in a certain zip code, which will again determine their health outcomes. So we want to talk about community engagement and community involvement. Just more things to think about and talk about. Anybody have a comment they would like to add to this? And I'm going to check the chat. Mark put something in, yes, that he's not a parent. Again, that's why sometimes a parent leader or family leader feels exclusionary to the work. So thank you, Mark, for bringing that up. Anybody want to comment?
In my work and within systems of care, one of our key defining values is family voice. And I know that not only is there different levels, because we're supposed to be involved at all the different levels, but that means at that family treatment level, every family member is that family leader, because they're the leader in their own treatment. They're the leader in their own area. And then we move on to the community level. And I just texted one of my friends down there in Poto and reminded her that she is one of the community anchors down there. And then we have at the state level. So for system of care, we have a lot of family representation, and families that actually come and attend that have a place that they can speak and talk. And then of course you have, then the national level. And, a lot of our nonprofits, such as Oklahoma Family Network, is involved in a national level through the Federation of Families. So just remembering there are family leaders at every intersect, every circle.
Yeah.
But I don't think everyone understands that or gets that.
Right. Thanks, Jerry, for bringing that up. Yeah, I think that's what's important to know, is that family voice, community voice is important at all three levels. So what are we doing collectively as partners to have those levels of partnership and platforms? And then how do we bring people in to those different ones? Tana, looks like your group has a question or a comment.
We have a question. We want to know if there's someone on here that can explain Peer Navigator to us. Anybody?
Eileen, you want to?
Jerry, you want to take a stand in that?
I certainly can. A peer. So think about a peer. So like parents, a mother, a father, a person themselves could be a peer, and you're navigating services. You're helping, you're walking alongside. It's like a family support provider. It's just a different name.
Right. And I'll add on to that is that my understanding, and Jerry, correct me if I'm wrong, but many years ago, I was credentialed in the wraparound model in families who were involved in the substance abuse system. And they just wanted someone who was struggling maybe with addiction or substance abuse, needed to hang out with somebody who understood the depth of that. And so from the addiction services group, they started saying, I need to talk to somebody, a peer, who knows what it's like to recover through an addiction experience. And so my understanding was this term peer also came from the mental health and substance abuse, so that there was this sense of I've been there, and that's where that peer piece comes in.
Thank you, guys.
Sure. So in physical special healthcare needs, it would be maybe somebody who has shared the similar diagnosis, someone who's navigated at the university hospital together, somebody who just considers themselves at the same level as you as a parent, or again, as a person going through a particular experience, and they just feel like they're eye to eye on this. So thank you for that question. Any other questions or comments? Okay. So this is one of the things that Holly typed, and when she does a presentation, we always invite her to, share a message with the audience. So this is from Holly to you. I want you to know that you can do great things through love. There's her love platform. Love yourself. You can do great things through love. So that's just a feel-good moment from Holly to you. So when we were together last year, we kind of ended our day with saying, okay, this has all been good and fluffy and fun, and we love hanging out together, but what are we going to do? What are our action steps? What can we do? What are some strategies that you can do to increase family engagement? And we talked about, is there somebody that you think you could call? Is there somebody you could partner with? And some people like timelines. I'm a timeline person. Like if you tell me I have 30 days to make this happen, that helps me make it tangible. I always say actions are just a dream until you put a timeline on it, then they're a goal. So we talked about that, like putting a timeline to something, to calling somebody or creating a partnership. And then are you able to even articulate, why does this matter? Like, are you able to really be able to share with somebody, why does family engagement make sense for you as a family leader or for an agency person, from Title V perspective to Sooner Start? Can you begin to articulate? So that's how we ended part of our day last year with this action step. So I'm just curious if anybody would like to share, if you're seeing this for the first time, or if you did any of this last year, would anybody want to share a thought around this partnership idea?
I'll share. One of the things that I took from it, I had a particular family in mind that would be very helpful participating on our ICC, which is the Interagency Coordinating Council for Early Intervention in Oklahoma. And she joined, and we were able to articulate, the importance of having her voice on that group. And she joined and was approved by the governor, and she's participating.
Yay!
So yeah, I know, it's awesome.
That's a great story. So Erin, I'm going to call you out because I think you were the one that said you had some thoughts, phrases still in your mind from last year. Was that Erin that said that when we did introductions?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say the inner circle and outer circle, that's what I remember the most, as far as really trying to explain to parents when I ask them to go to a coalition meeting, right? Or ask them to do something, what their expectations are. And that's really stuck with me. I think about that a lot.
Great. So thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I do think having that shared language, having inner ring community, outer ring, is really helpful for us as parents, our, family leaders, but also from an agency perspective to say, we're having testimony at the state capitol. We need a family leader to just share their story. And that would be an inner ring family who can really strategically share about their story. And then they cross over into that outer ring quickly if they get involved in the legislative or policy process.
And
So
having that terminology to give them, right?
Yeah.
So they can kind of say, well, I want to stay in that outer ring right now, or I want to stay in kind of, I don't know. That is a great visual.
Yeah, thank you. I think I shared with you all last year, my husband would consider himself a community ring guy because his passion is working with the community of other dads. And I'm obviously very dedicated to being an outer ring family leader, but my husband was like, nah, that's not my thing. I just want to hang out with dads and smoke a cigar and grill some food. And we're going to talk about what it's like as a dad to be included and excluded in some of these conversations. So thank you, Jerry, for bringing me back. Yes, that was a wonderful partnership goal. Thank you. Okay, so Heather still has access to this template, to this document. And if it's helpful for you all to have something to write on, she can email that to you, and you can share it with your team. You can start working on your own personal action plan to just change the timeline if you want. If you want to say, in 6 months, we're going to have a group of at least 5 family leaders to be our advisory on ... whatever that's going to be. Or to your point, I'm going to diversify our family leadership efforts by having more dads involved, or having more men, having more diversity in language. You might consider working with your incredible leaders that you have here on this call from some of the tribal communities who have so much to add to the diversity conversation. So just some ideas and some thoughts. And then the other tool that we talked about, because a lot of times people say, okay, well, how do I do this? And how do we even get started? We also shared just Rihanna that said she had a platform to teach self-advocacy. So we have this form that's called 5 steps to get started on an advocacy project. And so again, Heather and Joni have full access to that if you want to use that for your teams. This is, again, just a little sample of that, but it's just 5 steps that I've pulled together to help people get started on doing an advocacy effort. And again, it's an advocacy effort as you all, or they define that at a community level, or even at the inner ring. If they want to say, I just want to learn better parenting skills, that's advocacy. That counts. Or if you want to say, I want to do a 5K run to benefit Awareness Day for Autism or cerebral palsy awareness, or whatever it is. This is an advocacy thing I've wanted to do, but I've been stuck. I don't know how to get started. And then, of course, at the outer ring, if somebody says, "Hey, I want to be appointed by the governor to the ICC," that's something I've really wanted to do for a long time. How do I start that? So this 5 simple steps to get started. Heather and Joni can share that with all of you. Take it back, use it for yourselves or for the community leaders in your world. So we're getting close to time, and I want to make sure we have time to promote next month's Joining Forces conference featuring Valerie Williams at the USAID. You guys probably know her a lot better than I do. I started stalking the website and looking, and man, I'm so impressed. And of course, our wonderful Wanda being there, that's so incredible, and how we can celebrate her new role. That's fantastic. And they have shared with you the 7 partner values, which were developed by the Consumer Advisory Committee. That's awesome. Which would say to me, those were all outer ring families who helped create that document of the 7 partner values. I've put it up for you here just so that you can see that if you're not familiar with the 7 partner values. Again, Joni and Heather can send all of that to you. And be sure to register, as Joni has said, for the conference next month. I'm going to nudge my sister to try to attend that, whether it's virtual or in person. And so all of you maybe tell a friend, and if all of us invited one person, Joni's room would be overflowing. I think it would be super great. All of these, again, focusing on the partnership and what are the bridges that we need for partnership, as we've talked about all day today, how important that is. And so I want to talk about bridges a little bit and why this symbolism really matters. Before I do that, though, Joni and Heather, do you want to say anything else about the conference?
I can't see if Joni's unmuting, so I'll go ahead since I'm sharing my screen. Yeah, the only thing I would love to say is this is our 16th year of our Joining Forces conference, and every year it's just so fun to see familiar faces, but then new faces. So if you have not attended before, we would love to welcome you to that conference to be a part of that day and that discussion. And our vision with Joining Forces is not just that it's a day where people come and learn, but it's a day where we come and we build those relationships that continue on throughout the year and years going forward. And so, we just want you to feel like you belong there, and whatever voice you bring to the table, whether it's a family voice or an agency voice or an organization or just a community member, we would love to have you there, and we will have a seat at the table for you for sure.
Great, thank you. I love that we're starting to shift the term from training to learning. I remember being corrected when I was first getting into this work as a family leader, and I would talk about training, and it might have been Jan Moss. I don't know. Somebody said, well, Eileen, you need to rethink your terminology because we train animals, we teach people. And so that's always stuck with me that, teaching and education and learning is a lifelong commitment, and it's not a one and done. We don't go to the Joining Forces conference for a one-time thing. We embrace that, we pull it all in, and we learn from it. So it's really, really helpful reminder of why we need those things, because it's a lifelong, it's a long-term process, short-term, long-term. Short-term is we get to be together, but long-term, it takes a lot to understand the system. So when we were talking about getting ready for this, and we talked about, we really want to promote that we want the bridges in partnership, bridges toward partnership, bridges within partnership, all of that. I love bridges. I love the symbolism of bridges. I love the concept of bridges. I love the art that we get from bridges. And it just so happens that my sister Patty, who lives there with you all in Oklahoma, works for the Department of Transportation, and she's a bridge designer. And she's very gifted as a civil engineer, and she's responsible for many of the bridges that you all see in Southeast Oklahoma and Eastern Oklahoma. And I'm going to put her on the spot here in a minute and let her share a little bit more. But I just started looking online at some of the bridge designs in Oklahoma that are not necessarily credited to her design. But it really struck me, the new Oklahoma City Bridge that's downtown, which obviously you guys know it a lot better than I do, but just the diversity and the beauty of the bridges across your state, and how that one in downtown Oklahoma City was like, holy cow, where'd that come from? Who had the vision for that? Who put that on paper? And what is the symbolism? All of that went into that. And then when you think about, on the other hand, in more of your rural areas, which you have so much of beauty in your state, and the history of some of these bridges, and it just spoke to me about the diversity of our voices and the diversity by which we partner together, and that some bridges are built and designed for the big wow factor, and some bridges are simply really to connect one side to the other. And so I just thought it was fascinating and wanted to just give a few nudges around the visual, like we showed the football stadium earlier. If you think about the visual of bridges and what you can do to create more partnerships, and that you can be a bridge to some of this. So I don't know, Patty, if you want to come on or not, but or if you don't, I can give a little bit of what you've told me about the Oklahoma City Bridge. But if you want to, you can talk about how it was designed and why it was designed the way that it was.
Hello, I'm Patty. I'm not sure if most people are probably aware of the Scissortail Bridge, but it was part of our MAPS program, and it was just simply to group our communities together, because we had communities on the north and the communities on the south. And I just remember that as being a huge deal. We've created a park on the north end, and now just recently they built a park on the south side. And so the south side's got basketball courts, pickle courts and stuff like that. But, just the whole main message was to just have people be together,
I just love that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I didn't even know that when I chose this as a symbol for today's presentation. And Patty was like, that's perfect, because the whole reason this project came up was to connect people, connect communities, and to engage the community to come together and enjoy what downtown has to offer. And of course, I go there when I come to visit you all, so that's cool. But then also the bridge on the right just having a different function, and that was an old railroad bridge, right, Patty?
Yeah, it was.
And so the history of that, and why, again, we talked about explore our history in family engagement. They could have knocked down this bridge because its purpose was long gone, but they didn't. They redesigned it, they recreated it. And Patty was teaching me that you can tell that by the height of the steel and the height, that's one of the reasons that was built for a train, because it had to have that level of height in order to support the weight of the train. How cool is that? And now it's been redesigned, and you can tell that by the concrete that's been laid. But again, honoring our history and honoring the history that you have in Oklahoma about supporting families, but sometimes we have to redesign our bridges and redesign our approach in order to make it work. And then for those of you who love to see data and like, well, what does that matter? Again, back to when we talked about the football stadium, if you really look at this next map of the state of Oklahoma and try to grasp, again, I'm just trying to use analogies here with bridges, is that these are the different regions of the Department of Transportation in terms of their bridge division, their bridge department. And my sister is responsible for all the bridges in regions 1 and 2. And many of you who introduced yourselves are in that area. And those are not the county small, the small county bridges, but the state bridges. So she's responsible for about, what do we figure, Patty, 23% of the bridges across the entire state?
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's a lot. Yeah. And just again, for those of us who love data, I just wanted to say that from the analogy of the football stadium and how many families, Oklahoma has about 23,000 bridges across the state. And in comparison, the entire state of California has 25,000. So you have almost the same amount of bridges as the state of California. And Texas is 4 times the size of Oklahoma, but they don't have 4 times the size of bridges, or as many bridges. And so the concept being, there are lots of partnerships to happen. There are lots of bridges that we can cross together, both symbolically, tangibly, and with people. I think it's an amazing analogy to think about the bridges that you all are going to be building with partnerships as we looked at that action step. Patty, do you have anything else you want to add before we go to the next slide or anybody have a question about bridges? You have an ODOT expert on the line here.
Actually, I have a comment, Eileen. The other thing that's really neat about the Scissortail Bridge is it gives us an opportunity for advocacy, because they allow us to light it. So in May, they light it green for mental health awareness. And I think it's in April is autism awareness. And so that in October is children's pediatric cancer awareness. So that adds another kind of neat layer to it.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I noticed that in the picture it's red. Do you think that's for like Heart Health Month or Valentine's Day or? Oh, I guess it is Oklahoma, so it's kind of red.
Yeah, but we have to be careful because we can be orange too.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, but I always get that mixed up, so. Yeah. Any other thoughts or comments? Thank you, Joni, for that tidbit.
Thank you.
Thank you, Patty. So all of this bridge talk is to remember that, that again, this message is from Holly, to just love the people on your path and that your kindness matters. And that you as a bridge developer, that you are being bridge designers in this work. No matter what seat that you are on, no matter where you sit on that bridge, you are redesigning or creating something new as that symbolism of the two bridges that we were just looking at. And to know your purpose and to be, even again, if your purpose is from an inner ring perspective, that you want to build a deeper bridge connection with your own child, that's great too. And if you want to be a bridge with an agency, that's super helpful. I want to go to the next slide, but I realize I need to pull something up in order to make this a meaningful slide for you. So hang on one second. So these are my 4 kiddos. You'll see Holly is there. And this is her message that I like to read, that she likes to give people when we're talking about overcoming adversity, doing things we've never done before. So hang on, I'm just trying to find it in my own. So she says, you need to know that you are loved. Sometimes people think that my life is a struggle. My life is harder than others, but others' lives are harder than mine. I know that in time, people will see how the hard things make you stronger. Don't give up. Learn to trust God. Sometimes he works slow. Nothing is easy for me except love. Love is natural, but learning to trust the love that is around you is what is hard. When you don't feel love, you need to love yourself first, and then love from others will follow. Drop the mic on that one. So that's Holly's message to you. And I think that coming from, again, her perspective of, she needs 24/7 care. She can't dress herself or do the things that other people do, but she can love and she can do something. And so it comes down to when we feel like we're overwhelmed and we just can't be the outer ring parent that we want to be, or the outer ring agency leader that we want to be, we can do something. And sometimes that's just being kind to somebody and being empathetic to their journey. So that's all I have for now. Would love to open it up for comments or questions. I think we have about 5 minutes and then you all get a passing period to your next meeting. And I want to thank you all for being here today.